Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of News Dabs for the Cannabis Multimedia Network. I'm Jimmy Young. We look for the most interesting and impactful stories in the emerging cannabis industry from around the world, the U.S., and of course in our home state of Massachusetts, still home to the greatest sports city in America, Boston. Okay, big deal. No, really big deal. I'm talking about the deal between Canopy Growth and Acreage Holdings for $3.4 billion. Now, Canopy is one of Canada's biggest publicly traded companies with a cap value of $14 billion. Of course, that number was actually helped out by a multi-billion-dollar investment from Corona brewer Constellation Brands. But here's the biggest news on this big deal. Other than an initial $300 million payment to Acreage, Canopy's full acquisition won't take place until cannabis production and sale becomes federally legal in the United States. Now, you might remember that Acreage hired former House Speaker John Boehner, who is now the lead lobbyist in Washington, D.C. Acreage Holdings is the same company that the Boston Globe Spotlight team reported about last month. They're challenging the Bay State's 3 licensed dispensary ownership limit. Certainly a big weekend of celebrations this past weekend, a holy moly trinity of holidays with Easter, Passover, and 420, all within a 72-hour period. Rain and wind didn't stop hundreds of people from flocking to Caroline's in Uxbridge, Massachusetts on 420. That, of course, is the national unofficial celebration of all things cannabis. Caroline's, you might remember, is the first adult-use only dispensary to be licensed in the state. It's run by Caroline and Stephen Frankel, who are also the first to qualify as a social equity applicant. Just another example of the pattern of women entrepreneurs in the cannabis space.
Caroline's is the only general applicant recreational marijuana store East Coast right now that's open. Everyone else is co-located. There's a few more that'll be coming on board in the near future. But she's done a really nice job with her business.
How proud are you that she did all the paperwork and filled it all out and didn't give an attorney what they wanted?
Yeah, she did. She did awesome. She did. I think she was, less than $10,000 she spent for an attorney. So it was an amazing amount of work for her. The hours that she puts in, still to this day, the time that she puts in, the compliance is very difficult with this industry, and that's because we don't grow. We buy from different licensed cultivators in Massachusetts only. Yep. And they have to be able to sell to recreational dispensaries, not just medical, because the medical can all sell in between to themselves. And the recreational ones that have their license for the final and the commencement license for product manufacturing, recreational, and cultivation are the only ones we can buy from, which is only a handful. And they've been all doing a fantastic job with us. We're doing business with Rev Clinics and Sanctuary.
Speaking of Rev Clinics, that was the scene at 420, on 420 at Rev Clinics, celebrating that big unofficial holiday. A California delivery service, EAZE, crashed on 420, costing it thousands of orders. Certainly bad timing for a delivery service on that one. The Cannabis News Global News Service 420 Intel predicts it will be 2023 when the U.S. finally legalizes cannabis on the federal level. The next country to legalize it, Mexico in 2019 and New Zealand in 2020. Needless to say, it won't be long before cannabis is traded on the Commodities Futures Index. In an upcoming In the Weeds interview, I talked with attorney Walter Sullivan, who is not going to be surprised when that day comes.
It's because it hasn't been a legitimate market.
Right.
The market's got to grow and figure out how this plays out. And once it plays out, it's going to be like oranges, it's going to be like tomatoes, watermelon, grapes, whatever. Yep. It's a commodity that grows in the earth in that it does have a value. And the question on that is when you go to sell or not, like we do with other commodities, is that how we put that into the market generates, and we find that with oil coming from the Middle East, is that how many barrels are we willing to put out there relative to the pricing?
One final note on News Dabs. There was a lot of celebrations, of course, on 420 over the past week, but fast food chain Carl's Jr.'s didn't care what the Food and Drug Administration says about CBD. At one store in Denver, it infused one of their burgers with that CBD. It's called the Rocky Mountain High Cheeseburger Delight. And in a little CBD infused stuff, and bingo, you've got a federal violation and nobody cares. Why? Because it's a whole new world of weed out there. That's News Dabs for this week. I'm Jimmy Young for the Cannabis Multimedia Network. Once again, we leave you with a few local cannabis-friendly events in the greater Boston area.